Okay. Yeah, it's doing its thing. Cool. So I believe that we're working. There's my this is my warm-ups. I like to do draw ellipses for warm-ups. If you're new here, it's I like to kind of randomly do these scribbles. This morning we've got Mickey Schlick. Morning, Mickey.
Good morning.
Mickey, you were doing like a little ellipse warm-up. You were showing me yesterday that I thought was cool. I don't want to steal the thunder. I'll let you do it. But this is just, I like to do the, just sort of I like to move my arm around a little bit, get the blood flowing, you know what I mean? And
For
I think that
sure.
it's like, and then also just make marks. That was something that you were mentioning too, just making these shapes and stuff. And they're imperfect. And, there's something about like just getting comfortable with the way that you move, with the way things look. And I don't know, just not getting like too fixated on perfection just yet. It's something that we'll have to work on. But love ellipses time. Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm big about is like warming up and being able to separate, the thought that like everything has to be perfect every time.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that like perfect practice makes perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But also you can work on, training your hand to do what you want to do without everything being 100% um, every time, right? That can also be educational, and you can also train yourself, and you can also explore with a lot less commitment. Um, so yeah, so that's why I do that.
Yeah. There's all kinds of fun buttons and stuff. Gabe Ripley just sent me a text. It's like there's all kinds of ways you can change the layout. So, um, uh, Mickey, I wanted you to just sort of circle back on something you were just saying. The perfect practice makes perfect. Um, I think that's so important, and I guess a lot of times we hear that there's this idea that we're led to believe that we need like 10,000 hours or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But really, there needs to be it needs to be a lot of focused, directed, likely. Like you get some feedback, um, you do some critical analysis and that sort of a thing. Um, all right, these are just warm ups, everybody. So before you,
Well,
before you judge me too much, I'm just warming up. But yeah, go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
just need a second. I'm
Yeah,
trying to make this video so I can do some stuff with some video as we work here, and
of
then I'll get in
course.
there and I'll do the same thing and kind of talk about it a little bit. Um,
Love it.
and
Well,
really, the ellipses, it's like aim and control, right? It's like I want to make sure that when I'm drawing these circles, I'm coming back into it without like a huge tail. Let me get a couple of these pictures out of here. And let me see. Even though you're working fast, like if you're drawing those circles fast, um, and you're really worried about getting the end to meet where the beginning is, like in real time, you're training your hand, to go where your eye wants it to go, where your brain thinks it's supposed to go. So I think this will work for what I'm doing. put this out.
Let's see.
Let me switch over to. Can we both share screens?
I'll stop my share. We probably can, but like we're still working out some of the kinks. All right, so here's my I did my warm ups, and and so I'm thinking, yes, I do wanna,
It worked.
yes.
Okay, cool.
So oh yeah, I can see yours. Let me see if I can killer.
So whenever I draw, one of the very first things I do, which may or may not help people, especially if you're working on a tonal drawing, right? Like if you're working in black and gray. From if you have, you know, this is the black and it's going to fade up into the white. Um, this is a long road. This is two much more manageable roads. So that's why when I draw with gray paper, because then you're worried about the stuff that's darker than mostly, and then you can come back and worry about the stuff that's lighter than later without having to worry about this entire, dark to light, um, transition. So one trick that I like to do that may or may not help people is I leave that bottom layer white, and then I add a black layer on top of it. And then I reduce the opacity of that black layer to whatever I want it to be, right? And for shits and giggles, I might put a texture in it. Let me make that not so ugly. And then what the reason for that is, if I want to draw something now, and actually and I wanted to do a little bit darker and a little bit lighter as my general like drawing method, then you can come back into this layer later and switch what that mid color is, right? So if you need your drawing darker overall or lighter overall, that effect stays in a slider on its own layer instead of just working on a gray background. I think white paper or like the white canvas is pretty intimidating. So usually like the first thing I do is get rid of that. And it's a good idea to, keep it in its own layer so you can edit it later. One of the things I like to talk to people about, do you know what non-destructive editing is?
Sure, but I'd love to hear more about it. Yeah,
So
like
basically,
this is a concept that you can help us like understand a little bit more.
yeah, basically it's the concept of like keeping everything in its own layer, or using masks to add and remove pigment instead of adding and removing pigment, paint, pixels, whatever you're going to call it. And essentially what it means is you get to come back as many times as you want and edit those individual things. So I don't have anything that I can break out the layer styles and the masking on yet, but that's fine. So one of the warm-ups I really like to do is I draw some parallel lines and then work on making circles, right? And sometimes I fill in, sometimes I make them different sizes. And the deal is I want my hand to practice making these shapes and circles and whatever else perfectly. And I want it to be able to do a random size every time. And then, so I have pages and pages of this. I probably have a sketchbook right here with it. Let me see. And there's a few drills like this that I really like. Um, I don't know if you guys can see this.
Here, I can hold on. Let me show.
Okay,
Where
I kind of
this,
do that too.
yeah, and then so kind of what I'll do is, um, and I think it's good practice for texture too. Is like if you can come here and say, okay, I want this one. Let's see, that's not a clean ellipse. And then you know that over here you want, let's say you want more of like a circle or a wider one over here, right? And then you start filling in. And I kind of do random. So I know that on this side I want all of these going this way, and on this side I want them all going this way.
The end result kind of reminds me of those stone mosaics.
It's exactly like that, and it's a good study in like how to use texture to bring attention to something, right? Like all of these can point up this way,
Yeah,
and it can really squash these things together. And like using the ability to, you have a ball. There's not a perfect circle in Photoshop. Give me 1 second. Um, stroke.
I really need a damn iPad.
Oh, there we go. Stroke. Um, then you come in, and it's really just taking the time to train your hand, right? Like your eye is a muscle. You're looking at artwork all day. If you're not doing new stuff all day, or you're doing the same thing all day, um, chances are your hand's not gonna be behaving properly when you go to draw.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's
so I always
frustrating as
like
hell.
so I like to do this like if I'm in a consultation, if I'm talking to somebody, if I'm on the phone, um, and sometimes I do it for a couple hours, or not. I wouldn't say a couple hours, but like I do it before I draw, get my hand warmed up. Um, when we were out at Paradise, I was drawing when we were out at the bar, and like that's a common thing that I do. And when I can't
I'm a
figure out what
doodler.
to do, I do I do these drills, and I just get my hand warmed up and going, and I forget about the fact that like, hey, these are all supposed to be perfect circles, um, or perfect ellipses. And the reason that circles and ellipses are important, if nobody knows, or if they haven't, if you guys haven't talked about it, um, is that one is a perfect unit of measurement. So one, I end up talking about this a lot. It's weird that such a simple concept would fit into so many things, but a lot of times when you're drawing, you need to measure, and this 1-to-1 ratio is perfect for measuring things. It's going one sideways and one back, right? And then we know that if we were to break this in half, let's see, and we focused on this going straight and this going straight and this going straight and this going straight and coming from here to here to here to here. This is a real slow one. Slower lines are messier. Um, and you have a circle. You know that it, the thing
Can you
that's
zoom in? Could you zoom in for us so
yeah,
we can
absolutely.
just
The
focus on
thing
the
that's the
circle and
thing
the
that's
square?
neat to me is that this is a unit of measure, right? So later on, when you need to measure things, if you can break it down to a pure square and a pure circle, you can measure, right? So say this is a wheel on a car, and that wheelbase is 20 inches, right? And the car is 120 inches. So that would make the car 6 car lengths long, right? So how do we find out what 120 inches is? Well, it's a drawing and we're at scale and we don't really know shit, but we do know the wheel is 20 inches. Actually, this probably last line I don't need. So if you measure from this line through, actually, it's probably better with the line tool. Line tool. If you measure down through, let's do this so everybody can see. From this point through this point and continue that on, where it hits on this line is the next circle, next square, next unit of measurement, right? So let's actually get rid of this.
Geometry always blows my mind. No matter how many times you see it done, it's just.
Yeah, but this time it's only, you're worried about one. You just worry about, is it square, is it circle, and that's all you got to worry about. Well, once we've done that, let me get this going.
While you're getting that up, I got a question here in the chat from Tattoo Now. Tattoo Now asks, with doodling all the time on top of tattooing and computer keyboard work, do you ever have wrist issues? Is this yeah, anybody out there?
Yeah, all the time. Really stretching a lot when you go to the gym and like doing yoga and doing hand exercises to stretch out all of the tendons and stuff is super important. I want to get rid of the contextual tab.
My hand gets stiff and like swells.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ice my hand a lot after a long
I've
day.
iced my hand. I used to also have to get these gloves that like go between the fingers and squeeze your hands.
Yeah, the compression gloves, I have them too. But I only need them on my left hand, the one I use all the time.
I noticed that when I sit at my house and try to do yoga, if I'm consistent, then that tends to be less of an issue daily.
I've been thinking about joining the yoga class over here in town at the metaphysical shop.
Let's see if
She keeps trying to get me to join because I've been trying to get them to sell some of my artwork. So,
oh yeah, they want to have a. It's
but
probably worth
I've
it,
been
man.
thinking about joining yoga for a while.
Yeah, it's a good. I can't do it in front of people. I can do it at my house, but it is a good practice, and it's underrated, I think. So let's go to black.
So I'll share another chat here. Kyle Olson, friend of the show. Morning, Kyle. He says, not so much wrists, definitely annoyance and some pain between the pointer finger knuckle and the middle finger knuckle, with a radius of like an inch. Yeah, it sounds very like it's very localized to a specific region, and so it's so important to be proactive, right, in terms of the doing the stretches and stuff. Like we do talk about it, but I think it's just one of those things. It's like really starting it as a habit that you get really consistent about, and then you're going to probably get a lot of the benefits of it.
Forming habits is always the hardest part. It takes at least 30 days of doing something consistently to form the habit in your brain, but it only takes 3 to 4 days of not doing it to get rid of that muscle memory and habit.
There it is.
Now I have to stretch my hands every day because I broke my thumb when I was young and dumb. And now my thumb goes numb if I don't stretch my hands regularly.
Yeah. That's terrible. Amber, I'm
It was
sorry.
my own fault. I punched
Oh,
something and I broke my thumb.
mm, mm. What's funny, it's like sometimes this pain, it makes you really aware of your own body. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I guess it's, what I'll experience sometimes like I really try to be aware of it, but like, how I'm sitting, what I'm doing, when I'm tattooing, especially. And like, a lot of times, like I'll like sort of turn my head so a certain way, so I can see just right. And then it's like, before I know it, I'm like, oh
You're
no,
turned
I'm
into a
all tight.
pretzel.
Yeah. It's like,
Uh-huh.
we said it before, a shrimp, get the shrimp back, posture.
Yeah, because I have a tendency to get closer to my work.
Hmm.
Instead of bringing it up to me, I have a tendency to just get closer.
It is really easy to do. So, like, I mean, I think that's something that like, Mickey, that you're really touching on by talking about like this unit of measurement, right? The one, uh, and like its importance. I think in thinking, right? Like there's all kinds of tricks and there's all kinds of tips that people can get. But like, how do you start to think about thinking? And then again, I would also emphasize this sort of like thinking about your own body. Like we could say there's a way that you have to hold yourself, so to speak. But I mean, like, there's so many different uh context, or it's there's contingencies. They're always going to be a part of whatever it is that you're doing. And so, like, you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to um like be plastic, right? Be able to adapt to the given situation. Like here, even you're working in this working, digitally, you're moving pixels around and stuff, but you're really starting to looks like you're starting to create some depth here, like some perspective and stuff.
So yeah, let me just get this right on mine here. There we go. So it'll be a little rough. But I did a little bit cleaner version of this first one over here. And so that's kind of what I was showing in the first time. Oh, not this one. We don't want that one. And beyond this, beyond just the ability to measure this, later on, like now that I'm doing the 3D stuff, I'll put this right here. Understanding this concept of the one-to-one in the measurement process is like pretty vital to understanding how maps work when you're going to wrap them around a 3D object, because they'll have a texture on a one-to-one ratio of they call it a map. And then if your model is not stretched out, then you can wrap it around. And I always go back to, like, you never really think about how amazing a perfect square and a perfect circle, and all these like primitives are. Damn it, way high here. So anyway, that's not that important yet. So what I'm going to do here is the same thing. Do an X in the middle. So here's how we find the middle. And remember, we're going to go for a car length that is 6 cars long. The perspective here might be a little bit forced to make it to 6, but if we were to
Now,
come
what was
off,
that? What was that horizontal line that you just drew?
the horizontal line is the horizon, right? So as this goes back into space, let me get a line tool and switch this to no fill. Give me a line, tiny line.
Well, you're getting that. Let's see. So, Tattoos by Mohawk said the unit of measurement ensures the proportions are correct, right? Yes, I think that's what you're getting at is really important. Like, so, proportion is a relationship, right? So again, like this square, its proportion is a 1-to-1. Sometimes we may, experience like a rectangle that might be 2 to 1 or something. Those would be the proportions. And so yeah, like being able to, scale those up, right, to some degree, like
For
that would ensure that you have a relationship between proportionality. So yeah, I think it's all very related. Is this all right? So Mickey, we got a question. What is this? What are you working in right now?
So this is Photoshop. I prefer Photoshop to Procreate just because again, you're going to be able to keep everything in layers a little bit easier. In Procreate, when you make an adjustment to something, you're gonna adjust the entire layer, all the pigment or all the pixels in the layer. And Photoshop kind of allows me to keep certain adjustments in their own layers. And just because I use a bunch of other programs on my desktop, that's why I'm in Photoshop. But everything translates to Procreate. So um, some of it's all this is all more like how to think about or how to force yourself to do the things that you skipped when you started drawing.
Sure. So when I started using Photoshop, I started thinking about my time, apprenticing for tattooing, and it was like we had to, it was like tracing paper. It was like everything was
For
like
sure.
tracing paper, and so the way that that's the way that I kind of thought about it. But now that I use Procreate all the time, it's like this is where Procreate got its aesthetic, right? It's from Photoshop. It's like,
Well, Photoshop. So they have these program. Well, all the programs, I guess, that goes through like they have. You can get programs that are easy to use, or you can get programs that are powerful. And sometimes they're the same program, and sometimes they're not. Um, Procreate and all of the iPad stuff, LumaFusion, Nomad, any of those programs are going to be very, very, very user friendly. And
hmm
they're all going to be able to handle 80 to 90% of everything you need to do. But when you get into, higher production value or whatever, then you're going to, you're going to need to have bigger files. You're going to need to share them with people in different ways that, it's not going to be a roadblock. It won't stop you. It's just, I've been on desktops forever. So
Well, so I'm looking at what you've just done here, and this is like a 3D representation of the 2D model that you just made, right? You
yes.
kind of went
So
through
let
the
me,
corner to the middle, and then where it intersects with this
yeah.
lower
So
line.
this is how we measure back six wheel lengths to figure out where the final bumper, let's say bumper of the car would go, right? So here it's the same thing. If we find the middle on both, then we can draw a circle, or we would draw an ellipse, which is a circle in perspective, right? So here we have, ooh, now my aim's all off. So let's pretend this is a circle. So we have a circle, in a square, and then we have a circle in perspective. So if you cut this square in half, or you figure if you put an X through the square, you can find the middle, right? Pretty simple. If you then use this middle as your horizon, at least as far as assuming that this is set up straight in the horizon for whatever you're doing. Um, Coming from this top corner and measuring through the halfway point and continuing that line down, it's going to end up where it touches this bottom line, where everything is going back to your vanishing point, or I guess it'd be over here. Um, that's where your next square is, right? So now we know where the square is here. We know that straight up from there is the top. We know that the top and bottom of it are on this plane. So then we can do the same thing. You just keep going back into space, right? So, and now brush, go back into here. I'm using the line tool because it's a little bit more direct. I won't have as many misses when I'm.
just basically how I sketch out buildings for my paintings.
It's the exact same thing, but it's understanding that, breaking it down into understanding what a perfect square is.
Yeah.
Now you can run perfect circles all the way back, right? So
Mm,
let's say you have a building and you want to put arced windows in there, right? The arc is just a half a circle.
yeah.
So if you're like, cool, I'm on the top half of my building, or on the top windows, I need an extra square on top of the windows so that I can make this a giant, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
a window.
Exactly.
So, and that's how you make sure that this shape is
It's
consistent going back
proportion.
into
Yeah.
space, right? Um, and that's it. It's just understanding that, like, oh, wait a minute. It's not so hard to drive a car, because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know now that the last wheel goes here. We know that the center here is right here, and we can, and now, without putting a car here, it at least kind of looks like these things are
Tires.
in perspective. Let's say maybe we're going to cut it off with the body here, whatever, depending on how the car looks. But you can, if you start everything that way, and you understand how to measure, it can go back this other way too, right? You can go back into space this way and say, okay, cool, the wheel is 20 inches. Oh, let me get rid of this. If we say that the wheel is 20 inches and the car is 120 inches, and the depth might be let's say 80 inches, right? You know that it has to go 4 times this way and
Yeah.
6 times this way. And now all you're really doing is you're really breaking it down to just like a block, right? Like a 1. Can I make a perfect square? Do I understand what a square is? Everything's the same on all sides. Great. Right? It seems like such an easy concept. You learn it in kindergarten, you never fucking talk about it again. I keep looking over here because that's where my screen with you guys on it is. So sorry.
Mm,
That's cool. That's cool.
And so, just understanding some of those things, I think, is pretty important to the ability to look at things in space and understand perspective. And James, we were talking about perspective yesterday,
Mhm.
and I mean, first of all, it's super, it's very understated how important it is. It's not practiced enough, I think, by people. But at the same time, I think that, like, all of these concepts are not necessarily concepts that people need to be worried about perfecting and practicing forever, right? Like I said earlier, you do want, if you want to make things perfect, you have to practice making them perfect.
Mhm.
However, I don't think you need 6 months in perspective, right? Once you understand that, like, 1 point perspective has 1 point. Oh, wrong layer. Has 1 point. 2 point perspective has 2 points, and 3 point perspective has 1, 2, 3 points, and then 5 point perspective has 5 points. Well, that's it, don't worry about all the lines going across the page. Worry about
Mhm.
the fact that they're all converging on specific points, right? So this, I don't know if you guys have talked about this. This is 5 point perspective. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this, when you connect all these lines the same way that you would in any kind of perspective drawing, because that's what you do. 5 point perspective is how you get like a fisheye look, right? Say you're trying to draw
yeah.
something with like a fisheye lens, and then, I mean, that's not the cleanest. Let's do we want to talk about perspective, or are we talking about faces?
So all right. I think we definitely should transition to faces. But I
Okay.
like what you were saying about, so perspective is super crucial, and probably once you learn a little bit about it, then you're able to uh, eyeball it, right? You're able to
You're
like
able to
make a
eyeball it
gesture
and see.
that's going to be effective.
Yeah, well, like, we were you in Andy Chambers' seminar or whatever?
No, I wasn't, but yeah, no, go ahead,
He
talk about it.
had spoken about it in a way where it was like, give me 1 second, I should have a fucking there should be Paradise, and then there should be a movie in here. Okay, and then let me see if I can do this one because this one's funny. Wait, what was the last thing you said that I got lost on now?
Well, just that we were talking about, like that eyeballing can be,
Oh, right,
can be
right,
a really
Andy
effective,
Chambers.
yeah, really effective
So
gesture.
what Andy, had said that was like pretty powerful is on uh is that on a sleeve, right? You have, so he's looking at like, here's your horizon line. If you're standing here, right, looking at this arm, everything above the horizon line you would be looking up at. So those things should be like viewed a little bit more from the bottom, and these things should be viewed a little bit more from the top, right? And so you're not really necessarily like going into a whole perspective drawing, you know, for the
That
whole
makes a
arm,
lot of sense.
but you are keeping the horizon line and your relation to the horizon line, or the viewer's perspective, I guess, to the horizon line. In You're thinking about that while you draw, so that it kind of like, it makes sense. And I hadn't really thought of it like that. It made a lot of sense to me. Thank you, Andy. But that's a good way to think of it. And then, like I was saying yesterday, I was recently watching somebody else's, videos, and one thing they said, something that was probably one of my earliest lessons, which is, anything you want to learn, you can learn between the ears, right? Anything you want to learn in art, you're going to run into those problems between the ears. So he was talking about just doing, he's like, I'm going to talk about all these topics, but we're just going to do portraits. And I think that that's like, or faces, I guess. And I think that's a fun way to do it. Um, so let's see. I don't know if I can keep this on top. Hey, where's one of Jane? I made this real quick, so nothing's cropped in here properly. But a lot of times, what I'll do when I'm setting up, let's see if I can get this on the same screen. Here we go.
Yeah, we can see
Uh,
both. We can see
yeah,
both of your.
cool. So yeah, that's the way. So a lot of times, what I'll do when I'm drawing, when I'm warming up or whatever. It's playing is what's going on. Is I will find who or what I'm going to draw. Let's see. There's a good one. And I will throw all those photos into a little video, and these videos are like, or the frames are like 30 seconds each, right? So I want to be drawing pretty fast, and I want to be not worried about making a perfect portrait, but I do want to have enough of that aim we were talking about when we were drawing the ellipses. This is bad. To catch the likeness of a person, right? So there's a couple ways of doing that. You can work in form or you can work in shadow. Um, Form or value, I guess it would be. So form would be like construction lines. We got Frankenstein thing going on here, and then he's got a little bit of like character here in his nose. So this would be a construction method where you're like trying to measure out everything and do everything with lines, as opposed to like putting it in with shadows. Um, I should be playing this so that it gives me the time limit, but I'll give myself a break for a minute. And then some things I just draw in the edges of, and some things I draw in the whole shadow, whole dark shape, especially if it's a dark shape. And allow yourself to be messy. You're going to be able to fix this stuff later on. Don't get so weighed down in the making it right the first time, because you might miss these little happy accidents that make things super cool. I should have had a page of these in here ready. So maybe his head's a little bit wider. This isn't a very fun one. So another thing that I like about Photoshop, let's see if I have it, is you can do actions. And what these actions do is it'll set up, you tell it what you want it to do, and it'll record the steps that you take. And then so you can just play that action. So, or you can apply a hotkey to that action. So it looks like I don't have it on this computer. But one of my favorite things is, I call it sketch layer. And that is, let's actually make it right now. So view, window, actions. We're going to record an action. Why is it not letting me record an action? Okay, here we go. Stop that. Let's go. So let's see if it'll just give me a new one. So when you hit record, oh, that's the problem. I'm not doing a new one. Action one. We're going to call this sketch layer. And then we're going to record. And what we want to do with this is hide the layer we're working on, open a new layer, and then we're going to stop. And then we're going to come to sketch layer, and we are going to, I don't know how to make it a hotkey, but I can put it over here and we can use it later. And then so every time you just, once you assign that to a hotkey, every time you push F10 or Control A, it's going to, I can draw, scribble all day. And then every time I hit that button, it's just going to hide the layer and give me a brand new layer. So it's like turning the page in your sketchbook by just hitting a button. So, then you can worry about, hey, I'm going to do this one 30 times. And then I'm going to take the coolest sketch that I got from the simplest lines that I made very fast, but it looks good because it's just natural, and use that. So let me see if I can get this to, so we're working on, let's see, this dude back here. Oh, you guys don't have my cursor over there. So some of the things that I'll look at is how does the head shape of the cranium work with the bottom part of the jaw, right? So with Kurt, I see kind of like he's got a lot of muscles in his forehead, or in his eyebrows rather. This, of course, doesn't go straight back, but it's pretty straight compared to everything else on his head. So I'll use that. I know that his neck, the back of his head comes down. You know what I should do is get this so I can do it right here. It'd be easier. Oh, close enough. Another reason I really like desktops is all the hotkeys that are, on the keyboard. It's like you can play with both hands basically, right? It's just like playing an instrument with more than one hand. So where's my layers at? Here we go.
I'm so much faster with a keyboard and a mouse than I am on a tablet.
Yeah, and it's I like working that way. I do like the flexibility that the tablet gives me, but yeah, not in the same way that I like the way this one does. So
That's why I love my laptop, because it's kind of the best of both worlds.
for sure. So I guess, yeah, the big thing that I'm always looking at is like how these shapes go together, because how this guy's shapes go together is not the same way that this lady's shapes go together, right? They're more, hers is more like a larger ball for the head and a smaller ball for the mouth area. And normally what I'll do is figure out that like this is where the eyes go.
Oh, we're
The
not
nose.
seeing your other reference. If you were referencing that
No, it's sitting. She's right behind him.
just off.
Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, let me.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
It's this lady back here.
Mm.
But and I'm not really drawing her. I'm just saying that like she has different shapes than he has, right?
Yes.
So if he
Yes.
has a circle for a head, a more circular head, and then a more square jaw, for instance, right? And his eyebrows are pretty flat, and he has, kind of lower eyelids, evenly spaced mouth, or evenly spaced nose, right? Which obviously this doesn't look like him, but this is a far cry from her, who is more of, let's see, I don't like that one either, kind of a wide circle, and then like another circle. And then I see hers as kind of being, I look at how these two shapes interact, and it's normally going to, let's see, how would I say it? Let me find a straight on portrait. Who we like here? This will go straight on. So but that action is only going to hide the one layer. So that. If you're doing your construction method, right, and you're constructing a head, what I find is that this shape that the eyes and nose make together versus where the mouth is, and how, if that's really squashed down, or um or there's a lot of space somewhere, you can get it into these couple lines. Let's see. Yeah, so if this was a nose, right, and this was, I guess, the general housing of the eyes, right, the general placement of the eyebrows, I should say, this face, uh very square lips, is going to be different than this face, right, that has the nose a little bit higher up on the face and then the mouth.
This is exactly what you were talking about earlier in terms of proportion.
In terms of proportion and
Yeah,
pushing the proportion,
yeah.
and if I
Because
were to try to figure out this
mm-hmm,
by drawing this
mm-hmm,
at 100% effort, right, or I knew that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this portrait just right,
mm-hmm,
I can probably get it perfect, right, but it's
mm-hmm,
going to take a long time and a lot of measuring, and there's a lot of techniques to do that. I like the, kind of more like a triangulation method, which is
mm-hmm.
you pick a point, or you would say, like, let's see, say you have an eye, right, and you know that the corner of the eye, straight down from the corner of the eye, is the side of the nose, and then straight down from the pupil is the corner of the mouth, right, and you spend all this time just getting everything right in there. And what I'll do is I will say, okay, so the ear is kind of like this angle. The top of the ear is kind of like this angle from the side of the eye. The top of the ear is kind of like this angle from the side of the mouth. Um, and because I know these points, and I feel that, let's see, is there a way to, I don't have a way to, I don't have an annotation app. Um, but knowing that, then you go back and you make sure this triangle is right. Oops, that wouldn't be that one. It would be this one. Right. And so you make sure that all these look right. And that's how you use these 2 points. I'm probably getting more confusing than anything. That's how you make sure that these 2 points, you use those 2 points to help you find this point.
Right.
Does that
Right.
make sense? Let me blow it
It
up.
does make sense. It's challenging, I think, for people who are just getting started in drawing, and then also like if you're um, even if you're really just getting new started with like these kind of techniques. I think the thing that like maybe to take away from this specifically is that you don't get lost in these details. There is a larger sort of structure. There's a larger kind of relationship to keep in mind. So like
Exactly.
pointing
It's
to this triangle that you see in the face, that is going to be way more valuable, right, than just getting the eyelashes just right. You know what I mean? You can
Yeah.
get that. You can get that later.
for
Like
sure.
I think that's the thing. That's the thing to really to keep in mind is really kind of you know keeping the faith. Like you can do these amazing
Yeah.
details,
This
but it's the
makes so much more
relationship.
sense to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
It's the
like
relationship between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the
And
traditional way you're taught to map out a face with, the ratio of the forehead, and then here's the nose and the mouth, and that makes no sense to me. But breaking it down into shapes like this makes perfect sense.
And yeah, and then then all you have to do is, don't do it in a way where, like, you're not committed to it, right, where you can say, that one didn't float. Let's see. And so where a lot of people start with the eyes, sometimes like I'll do that last. I'll just place them and not worry about that for a minute. She's got pretty crazy cheekbones. And her chin, actually, like the crux of her chin is, at least from this angle, even up higher than her mouth, which is like a
Yeah,
little bit weird. This is probably wide, right? And then,
it's kind of creepy.
yeah, and you know, you can play with that. And I had a couple years ago taken a course on caricature, and up until that point, I was very much in the mindset where it was like, you don't fuck with a portrait. Anything that you do is gonna change it, and is therefore not a portrait. Which is kind of a good way to think about it for tattooing, because you know, you don't want to fuck up Jacob's grandma, um, and make her anybody that she's not. But at the same time, I also learned, or I have learned now, those eyes are different sizes. I have learned later that there's a lot you can do to a face, and it's still that person. It might not be a portrait the way that we think of like doing a portrait, um, but it can still be that person, and it can be even more of that person uh, than what what you started with, right? So like if I have somebody bring me pictures of a relative and then tell me some stories about that, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll draw the portrait, but I'll really try to break the face, right? How can I make this shape that makes the eyes and this shape that makes the bridge of the nose to the chin um interesting and more like that person? um and I'll try to break it as much as I can, and then as I bring it back, um it will be less exaggerated and look like the person, but also not be like a direct copy. So then what I'll do is I'll just take this, gray it out, and now that's my starting point for the next layer, right? So why is it not moving? This is, here we go. And now you can really spend time getting into like, okay, what is her eye shape, right? So her eye actually kind of comes up. Now that we know that things are kind of in the right place, her eye comes up and it's kind of like higher on the outside than the inside. So this one that we had already is probably a little low. And when I'm trying to draw the eye, right, we know that this is a ball in here and this is wrapping around. And it's easier a lot of times. This is not as pointy. This is actually right. And then what I try to do is I draw in the white part, right? We know that it's gonna almost touch right about there. So instead of trying to get that circle right every time, I just really try to focus on drawing in the white part. So now we know that the whole eye is too big, right? The bottom of the eye is too big. And we can tell because when I went to draw in this side where I thought it was, this got like really stretched. So now you can tell that this shape is not uh I can't draw on the girl, but is not proper, right? And then so you can just sit. Now you dial that in and you say, and then you can slow down and work on one part at a time, right? And let me see if I have this.
Yeah, so measurement, like
So it's measurement. And so,
there's a
yeah,
measurement that's, that keeps, you keep coming back to measuring and to, comparing the proportions. And I
that's
think that like,
numbing
yeah,
what I
there's a
want on
geometry
that.
to it. There's a certain amount of like stylization, because I do believe in what you said that like, where you can't, you can't like make it the real thing. I mean, it's a drawing, it's a, it's an image, let's say, tattoo, whatever. Uh, but there's something that's more, it has more of the person's essence. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Than you could actually, you know, photographs are, um, they're almost like it's almost, I've heard this idea before, but like looking at a photograph is like we actually look through photographs, almost like the way that we look through a telescope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
It's so close to like this, it's so close to this reproduction of, actually seeing itself, that it's, again, like that, where does the art come in? It starts to come in with, with like manipulation and stuff. And so let me see, are you, you've got your tablet out?
I
I
have
want
my
to,
tablet, and this is just going to show a little bit faster version. Oh, can you see it? Can we see it?
yeah, let me see if
Um,
I
we got a
can.
bunch
I
of
want to
glare.
see if I don't know. I think I might be able to.
Let me try.
Hmm.
So
Whoops. Let me see. For some reason,
I don't
I
know how
want
to
to
get
make
so much
you the. I want to make you
presenter.
the main thing, but I
Let
don't
me
know how to do
actually.
it.
That's okay. I'm going to turn this
You might
around
have
so that
to
it's
be a
not.
host to be the main thing.
Yeah. No. You're. I think you're totally right. Um. mm, we'll figure that out. I just. Oh.
Okay. Oh, yep, that's
What's up,
me. Hold
chat?
on. I'm going to put this on the stand, and then I might have more luck that way. But I have a couple of time lapses, so it doesn't look all. So I don't leave everybody on the, on the little sketchy stuff. So this thing. Let me see. I'm gonna have to skip through this one because it's a longer one. So you can kind of see that I don't have my original picture in there. I think it was something out of the show Vikings or something like that. But there's a lot of sketching, right? There's a lot of like, where do the eyes and nose go inside the head before I really worry about exactly what that person's unique shape is, right? So now I think this is going to be the final. I've now like figured that out. Is it going to let me skip through it? I can't skip through it. Okay, here we go. So as build these shapes up and build these shadows up and then take them out and then, just work on dark and lights all the way up, slowly that comes together and you can edit it as you go. So that's the beauty of working digital. That's the beauty of like sketching first and doing a bunch of different drawings. If I had tried to do this on my first drawing, first run out of the gate, it would have never worked, right? Like I would have never landed at the same landing spot. Um, let me see if I have this other one. Um, this is actually a pretty good one. If there's a video. Oh yeah, here we go. So this was I don't know, a few years ago I did RuPaul. And a lot of sketching. First couple look stupid. That's not what that guy looks like, or that's not what she looks like, or I don't know how to do this, but at the time it was a little bit different thing. And you want to have a bunch of different pictures of the person from a bunch of different angles, and you want to get in there and play with it. You want to see like, hey, what, how can I it right here, I've gone and been like, okay, how can I actually break the face? But because I understand like the proportions between the areas and how this person's kind of like structure works, it's a lot easier to catch like a likeness of that person. um let's see.
I agree. I think, I think it clearly read, and I believe, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, but it's like, you can't make everything out of place, out of whack, right? There has to be, some accuracy, and then also some stylization or some exaggeration, and that's what gives you some contrast. That's what gives
Right.
you some interest, and so I feel like, it's balancing all of those components. Like there's value, interest, right? There's or contrast. There is going to be what takes it to this realm of caricature, for instance, and that is like, that there's some of the features might be exaggerated to some degree.
Right, but everything relates.
Totally.
If the nose is going to be bigger, it's going to do something to the mouth, right? If you want the
Mhm.
mouth to look big, you might need to like idealize the nose a little bit. And it's just, for me, I was probably 12 or 13 years in before I really got into sketching and just playing with shadows and ink on paper. And the first whole bunch of years, it was so much of like, I plan what I'm going to do, and then I do that, and that's it. And somebody comes and says, "Hey, I want a bird in a tree," and I'm like, "Here's a bird in a tree," and that's it. And I'm going to finish that one. But in reality, I can sit down and sketch and say, "Hey, here's 10 birds in trees," and probably come up with something that I like much better myself, and something they like much better.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think that's the
But like,
definitely definitely the thing. You know what I mean? That like it's so much of what we do all day is is trace. We trace, we trace, we trace. Um, it's a huge part of it for everyday tattooers. That's what they're doing. You know what
well,
I
and
mean? There's nothing
I
wrong with it, but like, how do you learn how to be a composer? How do you learn
right.
how to do the thing, like you said, like get it out of your imagination, really? And I think there's going to be this process of really working through it, really starting to uh, um, develop your own aesthetic in your own hand. And there's only it takes time. It really takes a long time. And
Takes a long time, and then you kind of don't really see at the beginning. We struggle so much with certain things that you don't necessarily see what the end point is going to be, right? And for me, I still have this problem where I don't know what I want my style to be. I don't know where I want it to go, but I do know that, enable for me to feel good about it, I have to know what all the tools are, and what all my options are. And so now, if we take that to its, I don't have a, let me see, I don't have a I don't have a tattoo or a portrait that's a 3D sculpt. But now, I've been now 20 years in, we're finally getting from these ugly, messy sketches, that most of those things, right? All those speed ones that we're on Procreate right now, yeah, the finished drawing looks cool, but everything leading up to that point is a joke. And it's very demoralizing if that's how you're drawing it, and that's all you can draw, and you go out and people are like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Then you know you might not want to do that. But if you can turn around and say, let me see, am I screen? I'm still sharing, yeah.
there you are.
But then, now this was my last piece. Actually, no, this is my last piece.
Right? You.
And this is a bunch of different programs, and it's being able to throw these things all together. And it's not, this stuff isn't super tattooy, so sorry. This one's a little more tattooy. Where's my layer? Oh, cancel. X. G. Mm, B. So this is probably like the last cool thing that I did, where it was like everything sculpted out.
It's sick.
And that's kind of the same, it's the same process as making this guy. So even though this isn't very tattooy, it kind of shows the range. And when you understand all those tools, and as you can refine your final product, I think, basically as time goes on and you practice more, it's a lot easier to go out in public and show people this and act like it's something serious,
Of
right?
course.
Like,
Yeah,
I
of
would see
course.
this,
Mhm.
immediately you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a sketch. I can't believe we sat here for a fucking hour and that's all we got out of it, you know?
That's how long it takes, though.
But well, in an hour, if I had sat here with like one,
Mhm.
I probably should have done like one person from 3 angles or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but in an hour, you can get 15 or 20 of these down,
Of course. Yeah, of course.
and then you
But
develop the one that hits instead of
right,
developing the one that's first or next.
exactly. Yeah, I think. Well, this is the sort of the foundation, that you're talking about, because something else that I know you're really big on is thumbnail sketches. I also think that this is an important thing to do, and I, like that's a big part of the warm up and stuff like that. Is like you're warming up, you're just getting comfortable with making a mess, and
Yeah.
honestly, like what you end up doing, like through ideation, just making those marks, just gathering your images, your references, and then finally like really dedicating some energy into thumbnail sketches, all to give you like the best possible, like starting point to spend your time and make something that's much more refined, right? I
Yeah.
think that's what we all
Thumbnailing
want. We want that,
thumbnailing helps
like.
me solve problems ahead of time that
Hmm.
I would run into if I just started a composition without like planning out some proportions and where
Right.
I want the eye to go and things like that. Like
We
right
want.
now, I'm doing thumbnails on just
Mhm.
color blocking what I just drew and
Yeah,
seeing how these colors work together and switching up color combinations and seeing which ones I like the best.
and you're everything's physical, not into you're not doing any of the digital or the tablets or anything
Yeah,
like
I
that,
don't
right?
have an iPad yet, so I'm doing it all old school, but I've been doing that forever. So it kind of keeps my drawing better because I'm doing everything by hand.
For sure. I
And
wonder if I have.
about 6 months ago, my stencil printer took a crap, so I'm doing my stencils by hand.
I really like doing stencils by hand, and every time I try to use the Photoshop tricks to do my stencils for me automatically, uh,
Mm.
I don't like it. I feel like I get a much better result doing my stencils by hand.
Yeah, I feel like it creates a muscle memory because I created the piece and then I sketched out the piece and then I traced it on the paper and then I've done that piece 3 times now.
For
So it's
sure.
much easier to do it in ink on the flesh because I've already done that 3 times.
You're much more familiar with it for sure. Well, we're coming up on we're about an hour 45 in, or hour 15 in rather.
Well, that went quick.
Mickey, I know. Well, I really wanted to let Mickey share with us one, for sure. Like he has this really interesting um, this concept that he's trying out for this next year. It's like 10 back pieces or something. You're really ambitious.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm trying to seek out 10 back pieces. Let me see if I can find. I can't find it on my computer, of course. So now I'm gonna try to find it here. Um, where I want to find 10 probably surrealist pieces. This kind of thing. Maybe not this exactly, but it's 10 pieces where I want to sit down with the person and sculpt out an idea, talk about an idea, sculpt it out, see how it fits, make it. I can make this thing in a couple of days. It doesn't have to be this thing, obviously. Like I'm open to a wide range of ideas, and we'll be able to take a look at it like this, see what it would look like on a person moving around.
Mm,
And we're going to plan to get this knocked out in a year, right? 10 sessions over the course of a year. um, Actually probably 12 sessions because we're going to want a consultation session and a follow-up at the end of it.
yeah.
um, And yeah, I'm really trying to promote that and switch from, let's see, I probably don't have a recent tattoo on here that's like a walk-in thing, but switch from kind of, like, I guess what I've been doing to what I'd like to be doing, right? So going
Yeah.
from more kind of like portraity stuff to more definitely like surrealism, aliens, maybe not landscapes,
It's
but
so
like,
cute.
a lot of different, you can do a lot of different things. And you can come up with with a ton of stuff, but I want to do it big and I want to get into the details. And yeah, that's definitely something that I'm seeking out right now.
Well, so so definitely if you're still with us, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And then I'm gonna run Mickey's information again at the bottom. You can reach Mickey uh, at mickeyschlick.com, and then of course lowbrowknowhow.com.
So
Um,
yeah, I would just like to say I don't have a ton up on lowbrow know-how, but I am trying to talk about these things, art topics, and I'm pretty much open to talk about them anytime with anybody. Um, Content suggestions help because her neck is way too small. Maybe the whole side of her face is too big.
but lowbrow know-how is more of your educational side of things
Well,
too.
I want it. That's what I'm signing it up, or that's what I'm lining it up for, and that's what I want to do with it.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to go on there and enter a content suggestion, I will get on and talk about any kind of art stuff. Definitely more art than tattoos. I'm not really, I think that the tattoo side of thing is pretty well handled for a lot of people. And so yeah, dude, if you're interested in tattoos, mickeyschlick.com. If you're interested in getting online and talking art stuff, and I'll do better drawings than I did here today.
No, you were very generous, I think, with all of
Yeah.
your, the demonstrations and so a lot of what a lot of what you were talking about really aligns with the things that we talk about here. And so I thought it was, I feel like we can always sort of, go over these fundamentals, but
For
of
sure.
course, like on a personal level, you have to move past it eventually and start to do your own thing. But
And I guess that's kind of like, we didn't really get into like the drills or anything, but that's why I like the, finding the drills and the little practice things that I can do for my hand. So I know that my hand's going to do what I want it to do, and I'm not sitting in, uh, a not gesture. What am I thinking? Anatomy class,
Consultation.
and my hand won't, and it never looks right because my hand's not doing what I want it to do anyway.
mm,
Does that make
yeah,
sense?
well,
Like,
no, I
the more,
think there is something to it. Like there's different needs, right? So
for
if somebody
sure.
wants to teach anatomy, right, you need to really sort of you need to
No,
study really hard on and learn all of the names of all of the bones and the muscles and stuff. But of course, if you want to draw it, it becomes so much more important to be able to how to think about it. So learning that stuff is important. It's important to go over it, and it's important to revisit it. But of course, like there
absolutely.
has to be this real world. Like you gotta test it in the real world, and that's the thing that I think is, that I'm really taken away from doing this show. From making my art, my tattoos, and then of course like getting a chance to to talk to others as well. I think that's the real thing.
I think that's kind of the stumbling point that I'm having too right now, or well, that I'm personally having right now, is that like I want to be able to talk to people and I want to be able to talk about these things because I don't get to all the time, and then I'm just sitting there like, in your head you think you know how it works, and then you say it out loud and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound right, or oh, I'm saying that but I'm not doing that, um and it makes a lot more sense.
No, it does. I mean, I think that's a part of it. Like, once you've been making art for a while and you've experienced some areas of success, you might actually be able to do some things that are amazing, right? You might actually be able to do some things that are just, like that really wow people. And how do you do that? And so, like you said, it's becomes very difficult sometimes to teach it. How could you possibly teach this to somebody? Um, and that's a part of our, of our community, and of what the things that we're interested in is, like, we want to share what we have and what we know, but also we're trying to grow, and that's how that's what we all personally get. I want to draw us to a close. Amber, I want to thank you so much for coming today. It's so great to see you.
I got so much out of today. I'm so glad the kids' bus was late, and I was like, I gotta get to class. I'm so glad I got in before I didn't know what you guys were talking about.
Well, hell yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, it was really wonderful to see you. Where can we find you at?
You can find me on all social media platforms under Amber Morgaine, and on Facebook under Looking Glass INK.
That's awesome. No, thank you so much, Amber. And hopefully we'll see you again next week. Next week is going to be the final show of the
I
2023,
know, it's
right?
our New Year's show.
It's next week will be the last one, and then we're gonna kick off 24, and we're gonna have some really fun things coming up. So I'm
Are
hoping
we
to
going to
share.
have homework for the new year again?
Yeah, no, we definitely will. We definitely will. We're gonna have
I
some,
really enjoyed
hopefully,
that last year. I
yeah,
had fun.
and we'll have a project for sure, and then also some. We're gonna do some new structuring and stuff for next year. So really excited
Awesome.
about that. But again, just thank you so much for coming and for sharing, your insights as well. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mickey, yeah, of course, Amber, thank you. Mickey, thank you so much for coming and for
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks
yeah
for
for
having
all
me.
yeah for all of the things that you were able to share. I really liked your perspective on things, and
Mhm.
and again, I've really enjoyed getting a chance to work with you. You're very technically savvy. You know what I mean? A great
Thank you.
artist
I
as well.
appreciate that.
So
It's from gross feelings of insecurity. So
I understand
what,
that completely.
yeah, man. Yeah, same. That's why
that's
yeah,
why we're here,
we're
right?
all overcompensating. You know what I mean? But that's all
Perfect.
right. Because we're not alone too. There are people who watch this, and they get a lot from it, and that's who we're doing this for. And
Mhm.
I'm honored to get a chance to do it. And so again, we can where can we find you at, Mickey?
MickeySchlick.com and lowbrowknowhow.com.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And again, so thank you for watching Drawing for Tattooers on Guy Atchison's Reinventing the Tattoo Network. Want to say thanks to Gabe and to Guy. Thank you both for everything you do. We've got lots of great shows. Definitely check out Jason Leeser on Sundays at 1 p.m. Tattoo Collecting 101 podcast. That's Thursdays at 6 on Reinventing the Tattoo. I'm James Wisdom. Find me at tattooingwisdom.com, and that's my name on social media too. So anyway, we'll see us again next week, right? Last show of 2023. Happy drawing, everybody, and we'll see you next stream.
Have
All
a
right.
great week.